it's a great honor, Mr. President, to have you here with us today. And as many on this session will know about you and your background, I'll do a quick introduction and then move on to some of the many questions that we'll try and cover in the next 30 minutes. You were elected president of Armenia in 2018. You are a distinguished scientist with a deep understanding of technology. You've won the Lenin Prize and studied alongside Stephen Hawking at Cambridge, and you were the first ambassador to the UK for Armenia, as well as then following Belgium, the Netherlands, Luxembourg, the Vatican, and head of mission to the EU. And you've been advisor to the EBRD and to the Kennedy School of Government and to many multinational corporations such as BP and Bank of America Merrill Lynch. So with this remarkable career, you're probably one of the best placed to opine on the world today and how we get the next 10 years right. So if I may, Mr. President, turn to you and ask, as the world is responding to COVID-19 pandemic in different ways, can you talk to us a bit about how Armenia has responded to the pandemic and how you see the world changing as a result of the crisis?
Oh, yeah. Well, Alexandra, it's a great pleasure to be here at this wonderful event, and I'm just distantly watching what you guys are doing because during the daytime, of course, I don't have the time, but in the evening I have seen a couple of recordings of a couple of interviews which were great and interesting. Well, Stan, thank you for the introduction. Armenia is I would say we are in the middle of the process fighting coronavirus. And the government is trying to do their best in order to achieve success in this fight. But unlike many countries, now we are just climbing the curve. Is that curve Gaussian or any other type of a curve? We have not reached the maximum of that curve. And that makes us quite vulnerable. For a small country like Armenia has 3.5 million population. Today we are seeing between 500 to 700-800 infected per day through testing, and unfortunately around between 7 to 15 deaths every day, which is tragic and too much. I'm not going to discuss what did we do right or what as the government did it right or wrong, because there will be plenty of time in the future to discuss who did it right, who did wrong. Because unfortunately, I don't believe that this is going to be the last pandemic for human race on this planet. Because viruses, bacteria were with us for thousands of years, and we were coexisting and fighting with them. For many viruses, we don't have cures even today, and we have to learn how to live with them. But the main way of fighting coronavirus as 100 years ago is to keep the social distance and not to allow the virus to be affecting our lives through going too fast distribution. But there's no way that in the 21st century we can avoid this, because this is 21st century and the world has dramatically changed. It has dramatically changed because we live in a very fast world. We live in a world that is, our lives is half virtual, half real. We are concentrated in big cities. We are concentrating in big shopping malls. We are traveling in big airplanes and sharing the air there. We have managed to hurt our nature. I mean, I'm speaking about the world. And we have managed, and that is why whatever is happening today is dramatic. But also, I would not say that the world has changed because of the coronavirus. My statement will be that the world was changing the last several years, several decades. We were not noticing that this is a completely different world than it was before. And the coronavirus is just an accelerator. We call it accelerator, call it a cold shower that has forced us to understand that the world that we live is different, and we have to act to fight pandemics or any other risk differently than we were doing before. And Armenia is not unique in this case. We're a bit later than some of the countries. We are doing a bit better than other countries. We are doing a bit worse than the others. But the solutions more or less are the same. So the question is, I hope that we will reach the maximum of the curve sooner rather than later. And as the president of the Parliamentary Republic, my role is to advise the government. My role is to lead whenever they need leadership. And to be honest, yesterday I had a very long discussion with our Minister of Health and also former ministers of health, doctors, actual prominent doctors and heads of hospitals in order to discuss what's next. So today we're having hard times. So what's the strategy? What are the necessary moves, and what sort of managerial skills or the tools we need tomorrow to accelerate the recovery of Armenia from this pandemic? Of course, Armenia is a small country that gets also support and help from other countries. But don't forget that Armenia is a small state, but quite a big global nation. There are 3, 4, maybe 5 times more Armenians living abroad than here in Armenia. So we share experiences with them worldwide. So we are in the middle of what is happening in the world, but we have our difficulties today that we have to overcome. But the point that I want to make is that coronavirus is not the reason of the change. It's just probably a consequence, a result of the changed world. Because in this new world, a lot of risks are spreading much more faster. They are unpredictable. They are the ways that we have to fight them are not the classical ways that we had 50, 40, even 30 years ago. So we have to rethink this new world, and we have to rethink how we fight pandemics in this new world. Did I answer your question?
Yes, you did. And actually, you touched on some of the things that I'm really keen to get to throughout our discussion here today. But you've already touched on this right now. But you've coined a new term, quantum politics, which is really interesting. And you've mentioned some of the elements that go into that. And I see that you describe this, which is reflecting the way in which interactions between individuals and politicians and nations has changed, as you just said. And you were getting to, and you were touching upon this, but I'd be really keen to hear if you could unpack that a bit more. But also, when we're looking into the next 5 to 10 years, how do we need to, with this sort of new world we're in, where it's more of a quantum state than a classical state? How do we knowing that, how do we organize ourselves in the sort of medium to long term?
Well, thank you for the question. The understanding or the thoughts that the world has changed is with me for many, many years. Between politics, when I was prime minister some 24 years ago, and now presidency, and also the time of running academic research, but also working with big multinationals. So I had time of thinking. And of course, as a former physicist, for me, I sort of discovered for me that we are living in a world that is united. So things that we apply, or ideas or mathematics or principles or philosophy that we apply to nature, in many cases could be applied to human race as well, or to us. So we are not separate. We don't live with different logic than the nature. And the moment you start thinking about human race and human society on globally, you discover that, of course, we are different today than 100 years ago. So what does the word quantum politics or quantum world mean? It means a lot of things. Of course, in a couple of minutes, it will be very difficult to explain that. But I hope that soon you'll be able to read a book that is a child of coronavirus that we wrote together with my younger son, Haik, who is on his own well-educated, a very successful businessman, running his own venture fund, but also a chairman of a couple of big multinational companies. But we had the time, late evenings, to discuss what I had, as a first physicist, ideas about quantum behavior of global risk, sharing with him. And eventually we started having exchange and writing to each other and discussing. And during the coronavirus, a new book appeared. Most of the writing was done by Haik, of course, and I was sort of a mentor or a chief editor of this book. But we are now talking to an agent, and the book will come out telling more in detail about quantum politics and in a way of a dialogue between two generations, the son and the father. And I'm myself looking forward for this published book. But in short, when I say quantum, I mean many things. First of all, I mean that this world is different than the classical world that we lived, let's say 30, 40, or 150 years ago. What has changed is this is a world that has become unpredictable, unstable. There is too much fear on discomfort because the things could not be predicted as before, and that's why it looks like sort of a random world, that random things are happening. Maybe the reason for that is that the way we approach to the world, or the way we do our research and understanding of the world, the logic that we use is not the right one. We are still using classical ideas of political institutions, political parties, even basic and fundamental ideas like democracy and others. We are still using the notation and understanding that was formulated 100 years ago or after the Second World War. Indeed, but the world has changed. The world has become much more faster. The world has become much more quicker, interconnected. Quantum also means that the importance of an individual or a quantum object, that is the human being now, is different than it was, let's say, 50 years ago, because this individual can communicate with the speed of light through Facebooks, through new technology, through many ways with the world. So this is a world that a big part of our time we are virtual, a big part we live, you can say we live in the matrix. The other half of our life we live in real world. And this has huge impact on our behavior. It has huge impact. First of all, that matrix or the virtual world is where we act as a quantum object in many ways. It's not regulated. We are free. We do whatever we like. There are no moral values in many cases, and there are no restrictions. Of course, this virtual life or the matrix will have direct impact on our natural life. So we live sort of in a quasi-classical, quasi-quantum world where individual power becomes more and more powerful. It shows also in politics. Because a part of politics, which was always the case, we go back 2,000, 3,000 years ago, entertainment and politics were bound together. Remember gladiators and so on. So now in this new world, I think that the merger of entertainment or direct access to the public and politics is becoming much more obvious. And the way political events are happening, they are happening in many cases, not because there is a structure, there is an ideology, there is a political party, and so on and so on. In many cases, it's happening because there is an individual particle with high energy, with the right message, in the right environment, and that individual or individuals with high energy can create a chain reaction in physics. You have highly energized elementary particle hitting an environment which is the right one, like uranium, specific type, and then you get a chain reaction. So after one hit, you have 10. After 10, you have 100. After 100, you have 1,000. And here you are, a chain reaction that you cannot even stop. Look at several revolutions or changes that happened, or elections that happened in this world the last 10 years or 15 years. Sometimes unpredictable, sometimes people that were nowhere 3, 4, 5 months or a year before becoming a leader. They come, chain reaction, and they win. So the world has changed. The power of individual has been growing. There are many other reasons why we call it quantum. And the other reason is that, amazingly, I found that methods of physics or natural sciences, or indeed the quantum ideas of quantum mechanics, could be used in order to describe what is happening around us. In some sense, this is a quantum world, because if I compare development of science, specifically physical science, let's say a bit more than 100 years ago, and development of the world, political world or economic world today, there are similarities. If we take science or physics 100 years ago, more than 100 years ago, we were again on a crossroad. We were on the crossroad because the beautiful, fantastic classical mechanics that was explaining everything on this planet started not explaining several phenomena or tests, and scientists were lost in order to describe the big cosmos or the small elementary particles. And then human genius, in the name of Albert Einstein, Max Planck, Heisenberg, and many other names, came out with a completely new approach. Basically, what they have changed is the logic, how you approach, the philosophy of thinking, and what makes common sense in classical and now in quantum. The moment you change your approach, the moment you change your logic or what is common sense, because the common sense, the theory of relativity, and the common sense in classical mechanics, they are different. When you speak about what is simultaneous event. So Albert Einstein was genius, saying that let's change our perspective, the way we think, then we'll explain things. The same is happening today. If we continue thinking in describing political life, social life, things that are happening in the nature, using the philosophy and logic of our classical behavior that was 40 years ago, will not achieve, or what we will achieve is we'll be lost. We don't understand what's happening. There's no explanation. Things are haphazard, and we're all concerned with the future because it's unpredictable. But the moment we start thinking differently, we start thinking quantumly, many things will become explainable and also predictable. So it's the similarity is there. So it's the time for humanity to embrace quantum politics and to start thinking what will be the new laws, what will be the new approaches, how on earth we are going to run, for example, basic idea of democracy when everybody votes today the same moment. Politician says something, 500,000 people vote. So it's not voting today and another vote is in 5 years' time, and in between the politician has the luxury of running whatever he has to run, and then will be responsible or will come to with his results in 5 years' time. The politician has to answer today, every day. And we see in many countries, from small Armenia up to big states, like in the United States or in France or anywhere in Europe. So quantum means many things, but it means, first of all, that this is a different world. And pandemic is a consequence. It's not the result. It's a result of the change. It's not, because the world has changed. That's why we have this virus affecting us so dramatically.
Yes, no, absolutely. Yeah, that was a very full response, and it touched on so many things. And one of the sort of two things I hope we can get to before we reach the end of our time. One is sort of directly related to the quantum politics and how you see this, the changing dynamics and in the way that the world works and we interact. Was that a big part of your thinking when launching Atom Advance Tomorrow, your long-term strategy for Armenia to play a big role in sort of AI and technology? Was that sort of aided by the thinking that you've done on quantum politics. If you could just unpack Atom for us and what that sort of how you see that being implemented in Armenia, and then I'd love to also get your opinions and views on the role of smaller states.
It's again quite a big theme to discuss. I'll start with Atom. Atom stands for me, Advance Tomorrow. Mm-hmm. And when you are president of a country, even non-executive president, like I am, because I'm a president of a parliamentary republic, president can lead by through ideas, and Atom is a presidential initiative. Because in this, well, if you take coronavirus as the boundary, like the fall of the Berlin Wall in politics in between two worlds, if you take the coronavirus as the boundary, not the reason, but the boundary, the new world that we are going to enter definitely is not going to be the same as before. So we have to revalue many things. And many things will become much more important. First of all, healthcare. So we have to spend more time, energy, and effort and money on developing and strengthening healthcare in many of our countries, the way much better than we were doing before. We have to spend more money on research on health and biology and biotechnologies. That's for sure. What also becomes very, very important, how we structure our industries and which sectors will become more attractive and which sectors will become the ones that people would like to put money there. Because coronavirus, this cold shower, has dramatically changed even the stock exchanges. Won huge amounts of money when the industries were stopped, huge amount of cash were injected into this. So it has created a lot of questions. There are more questions how we are going to run, for example, tourism tomorrow. So there are many, many questions, but also in this dramatic world with the deaths of people, with infected people, there is also something positive that gives us the opportunity to think about the future of our planet, but also the future of our own country, our own families as well. So where should we invest money? Definitely the future is with artificial intelligence. And that artificial intelligence, among other discoveries, are the drivers of the future of the planet, like discovery of electricity, like discovery of the power of the vapor, that discovery of computers. We should not be afraid of that. In fact, we have to embrace it because it will dramatically change it. And I don't call it fourth industrial revolution because I believe that we're entering an era which is going to be our evolution, rapid evolution. Revolution, it sounds, but in reality, it will be permanent evolution because science and technology will come with new ideas. And one of the cores of this change will be artificial intelligence. It will change dramatically how we run everything in our life, starting from farming, going to healthcare. We'll be able to discover things that we're not even dreaming, how to diagnose, even finding solutions with complicated things like the viruses with the help of artificial intelligence. So if I'm dreaming Armenia to become an important country, even being small, global but small, definitely I have to put my money and my effort into developing artificial intelligence in Armenia. So Atom, Advance Tomorrow, is a presidential initiative to encourage, to make Armenia as one of the small but leading countries in the world on artificial intelligence. So the components of that, first of all, is of course education. Very important. You cannot develop any new technology if you don't plan for years. So if you'll not be supplied by new younger generation of talented engineers and scientists. Secondly, the whole culture of startup, because this world is becoming a startup place. I mean, look at the biggest companies in the world. They all were startups of an idea, and they became huge multinational companies. The same will happen in the future because this is a quantum process. Because you have to support the individual power, which is individual or a group of young people or old but young people with the spirit of they believe that they can come with an idea and a process or a product that will change the world. And this will be the drivers of the future. So Atom, and the third is that you don't have to discover the wheel again. As a basis, you go with the best of the best in this world. So my dream is to start big labs with the big multinational companies that already are the leaders, be that, let's say if it's in Europe, let's say Thales, French, or Dassault Systems, or Leonardo in Italy, or Siemens in Germany, and so on, in companies from Silicon Valley, IBM and others, and companies from the East, from Russia, from India, and so on, you name it. So not to discover, but to create joint ventures, small labs where the excellence will be based, support with this with good quality of education, with the logic and the culture of startup, and also, of course, support them financially, because they have to get some financial support in the form of getting those who are doing specific research in this sector. They should be not paying the same taxes as others, so there should be incentives for them to go ahead, and there should be incentives from foreigners to come and invest money in this companies. In brief, this is the idea. The same
Thank
is,
you.
in short, the small states. I think the world has changed. If individual can have enough power of influencing things in this world, why on earth small states cannot do that? There are a lot of examples, and recently I have spoken to this with colleagues and deeply with Prime Minister of Singapore, a small but successful state, with the Emir of Qatar, small successful state, with the leader of United Arab Emirates, Mohammed bin Zayed, small successful state, with President of Israel, small and successful state in many aspects. So in all of these states, you can see the importance of new technology and new thinking and sort of a spirit of a startup. So I would love to see Armenia as a startup nation, as a nation of global nation, small state, that has the spirit of believing that you can be successful and become one day influential, although being small. And the idea is to create a club of those who believe in the same values. This is not a club about economic relations. It's not a club about having common this or common that, common geopolitical interests. It's not about having military interests, not at all. This is a club where we share values and ideas, and we come together to learn from each other, rather than coming together against someone else. No, coming together for this planet. Because there are many challenges.
I think we're out of time, but I couldn't agree more, Mr. President. Actually, as you know, we published the new big global index on artificial intelligence, and what we see very precisely is that smaller countries are really able to punch above their weight with the right policies in place. So I echo very much what you say. I know time is up.
And I echo what you are doing.
Thank you. Thank you.
Great.
I know time is up. I'll hand it over to Charlie.
Yes.
Thank you.
Mr. President, Alexandra, thank you for a fantastic discussion. That was absolutely brilliant. And I look forward to hearing the further questions that will come from the breakout Q&A session. Don't forget, we're going to wrap this session up here, but there's going to be a second part under the breakout Q&A happening now on the CogX app. And if you go there, you can put your questions through, and Alexandra's going to do her very best to get to all of them. Hopefully she'll have time to get through them all. But thank you very much. That wraps up this session on the Global Leadership Stage on day 3 at CogX 2020. Thank you both.
Want access to more CogX videos? Subscribe now for free at cogx.co.